The Khenti Mountains, a rugged and remote region in the most sparsely populated nation on the planet, Mongolia. But turn the clock back 800 years, and it's the heart of an empire that covers 1/5 of all land on Earth. And it's ruled by one man, Genghis Khan.
Historians have often struggled to put the sheer size of Chenggis's empire into some kind of comprehensible scale. At its height under his rule, it was well over 9 million square miles. It stretched from the Caspian Sea to the Pacific Ocean. He conquered civilization after civilization, civilizations that have stood in many cases for thousands of years on their own. And now this group of pastoral nomads are coming out of essentially no man's land in the central steppes of Mongolia and winning nothing but victory after victory.
Although a lot of times he's referred to as Genghis Khan, we believe it's probably more accurate to refer to him as Chinggis Khan. But for a lot of people, especially in the West, when you hear the name Genghis Khan, you think about brutality, you think about this kind of cruel, almost barbaric ruler. But that's really one small part of the story. He rules actually with a ton of tolerance. In a lot of ways, he's a lot more progressive than his European contemporaries. He understands that allowing the people that he's ruling to continue their customs, their religious practices, is probably what's best for his empire. And in a lot of ways, his rule sets the stage for the modern world.
Genghis Khan builds his empire from practically nothing.
The man we think of as Genghis Khan was born Temujin in the late 12th century, and his father was fairly prominent within their tribe. However, when Temujin is about 10 years old, his father is murdered by a rival tribe. And when that happens, all of the standing of his family essentially declines within the tribe.
So as Temujin grows into his adulthood, he's able to gain some followers. He establishes this meritocracy. So basically, if you are the strongest soldier, if you're the best fighter, the best provider, then you're gonna have a place in Temujin's tribe. And this really makes people want to join him and follow him.
He starts to develop a reputation for being both ruthless and crafty, and it seems in hindsight that Temujin was probably plotting his revenge against the tribe that murdered his father all along. And here's where we see the ruthlessness of what Temujin brings to the fight. Because he does take an awful revenge for the death of his father. He orders the murder of every member of the tribe taller than a cart axle. In other words, only small children were spared. Everybody else was killed.
This area of the world was characterized by groups of nomadic tribes. There is no sense of social cohesion like we would think of today, living in communities together. So because they are tribal, there tends to be a lot of conflict. And it is that sort of situation that almost requires someone who could step in and unify. And that's what Temujin does.
An assembly of Mongol tribesmen proclaims Temujin their new leader and gives him a new name, Genghis Khan, which means universal ruler. He decides to expand the territories he rules.
Genghis builds an empire within a generation. When you think about this is 25 years, how can you even draw a parallel with the Roman Empire, which is built over 400 years?
If you resist Genghis Khan, it's probably not going to end very well for you.
The Mongols understand intrinsically that it's inherently better to actually convince the enemy to surrender and collaborate than it is to have to slaughter them or wear them down through an attrition approach to war. So on the one hand, he needs to be a fairly generous conqueror. When he conquers you, he offers to let you join his society under very specific rules.
In addition to the territorial expansion that goes on as a result of his conquest, he's also acquiring treasure. And treasure not just in the sense that we might think of coins and jewels. He's also amassing a treasure of people, of livestock, of land.
At the height of his empire, Genghis Khan amassed a fortune estimated to be worth over $120 trillion in today's money.
When it comes to the spoils of war, Whether it was forcibly taken from a city or given voluntarily through tribute, the possibilities are quite literally endless. Any kind of treasure made of anything from jade to porcelain to ivory to gold to silver. And so it's fair to think that all of these treasures, ranging from the Far East to the edge of Europe, may have made their way back to the heart of their empire.
Genghis Khan establishes his own new currency system, which is based on silver coins. We also have some evidence that him and his successors were some of the first to use paper money, which is really interesting. So we have to imagine that there was a lot of gold and silver and just precious metals floating around the empire as well.
But all of Genghis Khan's riches can't save him from a mysterious death.
We're not sure exactly how Genghis Khan died, but we do know when and where he died, which is August 18th of 1227, somewhere in what's today northwestern China. There are a lot of stories about how he died. He was almost 70 years old at the time, so that might have been one of the main causes. But some stories say that he took an arrow and he fell off his horse and suffered an injury.
Kublai Khan is Genghis Khan's grandson. He's actually going to oversee the Mongol Empire kind of at its height, at its absolute apex. Kublai Khan is the one that actually kind of wins the war with China once and for all. He's obsessed with bringing about the final conquest of the southern Chinese cities that up until the time of his reign had been able to withstand the Mongol assaults.
So one of the things that helped Kublai Khan conquer China is a new kind of catapult. The Mongols called it the Hui Pao. And basically, by having a heavy counterweight, it can sling a large projectile of some 600 pounds, a good 300 yards, to smash through enemy walls of fortified cities.
The Mongols don't just fling stone projectiles or explosives into Chinese cities. They will also try to poison the water supplies by flinging the carcasses of dead livestock over the walls. They will also fling the heads of their enemies over the walls. There's nothing quite like a pile of skulls to serve as a wonderful message to anyone who might be thinking about resisting your conquest.
With his invasion of China complete, Kublai Khan now controls 20% of all land on Earth.
So Kublai Khan inherits the capital in Karakoram, but because his focus is on controlling and ruling China, he wants to build palaces further south, closer where he can keep an eye on the Chinese.
So after he conquers China, Kublai Khan wants to be closer to it rather than staying in Karakoram. And so he creates this new capital some 200 miles away from Beijing.
There are many experts who believe that Kublai Khan would have wanted to bring Genghis Khan's treasure along with him to this new capital that he built to showcase all of the Mongol riches. Kublai Khan names his new capital Shangdu, but at the same time, Marco Polo is working for the empire as an advisor. And through his accounts, the name becomes somewhat garbled, and it's why we now know it as Xanadu.
Xanadu is in some ways mythological and in some ways entirely real. It's like a Shangri-La, only we know for sure that it was actually constructed. Marco Polo claimed to have seen storehouses filled with treasures belonging to the Great Khan, as well as golden and bronze statues in every room.
Several surviving accounts document the vast treasure held at Xanadu, but none of them indicate what happened to that treasure.
When Kublai Khan dies in 1294, there's a lot of infighting among the Mongol successors, there's a lot of Chinese revolts, and things really go south for the Mongols. And by 1368, about 75 years after Kublai Khan's death, the empire falls.
So by 1430, the city of Xanadu no longer has any real influence, and as a matter of fact, the great structures themselves began to be reused to build domestic dwellings or for other civil purposes. So the image that we might have of Xanadu is lost to us because it is incorporated into the next page of history.
But the legend of this glittering city lives on.
The legacy of Xanadu lives on partly because of Marco Polo's writing, partly because of the Coleridge poem, but it's important to remember that this is not a fictional paradise, it was a real place.